One of the things that Dale and I realized by the time we had done all the reading for our book was that the relation between the minimum wage and inequality had not been well studied. There's been a number of studies in the US on does the minimum wage reduce poverty, but the American definition of the poverty line is not well linked to the level of our minimum wage, and it's just not going to happen that a normal minimum wage increase is going to affect many people and get those who are in poverty above the poverty line. However, if you look at the minimum wage and inequality, there have been two very good studies over the last 20 years that have looked at that. DeNardo, Fortin, and Lemieux in 1996, a very much cited study, concluded that the minimum wage was responsible for about 25% of the increase in the standard deviation of wages over the course of the 1980s. And more recently, Aaron Dubé at UMass Amherst has looked at the effect of the minimum wage on family incomes and concludes that for low-income families, a 10% increase in the minimum wage will increase their income by about 2.5% to 4%. In the US, by and large, negligible. That has to do with the size of the minimum wages and also has to do with other factors. I've presented a meta-analysis of these results at the RDW 2015 conference. And the only place where there was what even in this literature would be considered a moderate effect was for those who have not completed high school. Labor markets are very unusual. Alvin Roth was the 2010 Nobel Prize winner in economics, was interviewed recently by the Minneapolis Fed and said that it's a matching market. And it's a matching market where price is important, but there are a lot of other factors that are important too. It's not like a commodities market, not like the stock market or the Chicago Board of Trade, where really all that you need to know is the price, because you know everything there is to know about each commodity that you're buying. Labor markets don't work like that, and so many other factors are important too, and they can have a determining effect that overrides prices to some extent. Whether the effects are the same or different in developing countries is difficult to tell at the moment. The labor markets are institutionally very different. And in work that Dale and I did for the ILO, surveying this literature, we found that there were some problems, econometric problems, statistical problems, with much of the work that made us not comfortable with accepting the results. The US literature has experienced these same problems, but has resolved them probably a few years earlier than they've been resolved in the literature on low-income and developing countries. A very important issue is how well do you match treatment observations where the minimum wage rose, with similar observations, except that the minimum wage didn't rise. This is what you want to do to try to isolate the effect of the minimum wage. In the US, the minimum wage tends to rise more in some states than others, and there are big differences in other regards between those states in which it rises and in which it doesn't. If you match carefully, so you compare states in which the minimum wage rises often, and which are similar with each other in many other regards, you typically find very small or no effects on employment of the minimum wage. If instead you compare all the states together, the states where the minimum wage often rises and the states where it doesn't rise very often, you can find a big effect of the minimum wage, but you're not taking account of all the other differences between these states, and so all the effects on employment of all these other differences will end up being attributed to the minimum wage. So yes, it's safe to say that the methodology will have a big effect on the results.